This Bible question is an excerpt from our television program, What Do the Scriptures Say? We hope that it will enrich your spiritual life, and we hope that you'll come back to www.scripturesay.com to find answers to your Bible questions. Thank you. Danny said I counted up 50. There may be more, but these I think I can clearly identify. And I said last time we'd take Danny to school. This is kind of a fun exercise to see, because he hasn't read the list. And the first one was the speck in the log, Matthew chapter 7. The second one was Matthew chapter 7. The wise man builds his house upon the rock, the two houses there. This one's a little more obscure, the parable of the children in the marketplace. You remember in Matthew chapter 11?
When Jesus said, we piped music for you, you didn't play a dance, or you didn't sing a funeral dirge.
That's impressive, folks. Yeah. And what does that all mean?
That's a fascinating parable.
It is. Well, they all are, and that's why we will spend some time looking at them individually at some length in the future. Then you've got the parable of the two debtors in Luke chapter 7 and verse 41.
Is that the one where the one guy owes a buddy $5, whatever, and so gets thrown in jail, and the boss forgives the...
There you go.
Okay, the big amount.
Then you've got the parable of the unclean spirit in Matthew chapter 12 and verse 43. Man. This one's a little more obscure. When the unclean spirit wanders through the waterless places, and there's an analogy there that's very interesting. Then you've got the rich man's meditation in Luke chapter 12 and verse 16. And that one, let me grab my Bible here.
Where he says, I've got all this stuff, I'll build bigger barns and a big house.
Look at how good this guy is doing,
that it?
Man. Yeah, that's it. When the guy sits around and he decides,
eat, drink, and be merry.
I'm doing so well for myself that I've got to get more and more stuff put together. Let me look at Luke 12 and verse 16 here. Did I say Luke 12 and verse 16? I'm going to get myself lost here. It's Luke 12 and verse 16. I went to Matthew.
Oh, okay.
You're supposed to help me here, buddy.
I can't. My eyes are broken. I can't see that print.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what happened to your glasses. Yeah. We're missing those. The land of the rich man was very productive, and he began reasoning to himself, saying, "What shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops?" Kind of a problem that we would all like to have, and really a great parable. Then we have the parable of the barren fig tree. You remember that one?
When Jesus comes looking for figs and there are none, and he curses it and it dies?
Luke 13, the fig tree, it gives all the appearances as though it was producing fruit, and really the application is to the religious leaders of his day who appeared to be the possessors of truth and wisdom, and they really had none. Then you've got the parable of the sower in Matthew chapter 13.
That's a long one. Sower goes out to sow seed. Some goes on rock, some on not so good soil, and some in great soil eventually.
And all kinds of analogies could be drawn from that one. You can talk about the work of the church is to sow the seed. It's our job to do that. But there are also ways in which the soil helps to germinate the seed, and you could talk about what kind of soil are you and why are you in that condition. Very interesting parable.
I'm having fun so far.
Yeah. Okay. How about the parable of the tares in Matthew 13?
The sower sows a field, and a few weeks later there's weeds in with.
Well, he throws tares in with it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They plant, and somebody comes in and puts. Yeah. And so when do we harvest?
Yes. And then you've got the parable of the seed. Now, this one's a little bit more obscure over in Mark.
The parable of the seed.
The seed in Mark.
The mustard seed. The king.
No,
like a mustard seed?
that one's coming up. That one's coming up. That's why I said this one. Let me get to Mark 4 and verse 20, and these are the ones on whom seed was sown on the good soil, and they hear the word and accept it, and bear fruit 30 and 60 and 100-fold. And I separated this one out from Matthew because Matthew talks about the different kinds of soil, and then in his conclusion, which is parallel to Mark 4 and verse 20, this actually is really another parable all unto itself.
About how much fruit.
How much fruit can be borne by the good soil when the seed is germinated in good soil. Then we have the grain of mustard seed in Matthew chapter 13, the one that you were thinking of just a minute ago. Then you have the parable of the leaven, Matthew 13.
Little leaven. Leaven's a whole lump. The leaven of the Pharisees?
Leaven of the Pharisees. You've got the parable of the lamp in Matthew chapter 5.
Parable of the lamp and making sure you have enough oil?
No, this one is...
Oh, the lamp under the bushel. Don't put your lamp under a bushel.
Yeah.
Under a basket.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Yeah.
We teach those kids those cute songs that have such significant meaning. The dragnet in Matthew chapter 13, remember that one? The kingdom of heaven is like a net.
Gathering
it gathers
all the fish.
Kinds of fish. The hidden treasure in Matthew chapter 13.
Man found a treasure and goes and gives everything he has and buys that field.
That's right. And then you've got also in Matthew 13 the pearl of great price.
Pearl of great price.
You have the householder in Matthew chapter 13.
If he'd have known when the thief was coming, he'd have stayed up.
There's one. And you have the parable of the marriage.
The parable of the marriage feast? No.
In Matthew chapter 9.
Is that the one about the clothes?
Here, let me give you the first verse in that one, Matthew chapter 9.
He invites everybody and they don't show up, so he goes and invites...
No, you're thinking of another one. Here, okay. This one is, and Jesus said to them, the attendants of the bridegroom cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can he? But the days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and they will fast. So that's the fasting at the marriage time. And then you've got the next one is the parched garment. You remember that one? The parched garment. Matthew 9 and verse 16. No one puts a patch.
The patched garment.
Oh, did I say? I said
you said parched.
Yeah, the patched. Yeah, I'm seeing if he's paying attention. The patched garment, yes.
Yeah, you don't put a piece of old.
How would a garment get parched?
Yeah, okay.
The patched garment.
You don't sew a brand new piece of cloth on an old.
Yeah, that's right. And then the next one that's right along with that is the wine skins. You don't put new wine in old wine skins.
Old rotten wine skins.
The next one is the harvest in Matthew 9 and verse 37. Let me give you the first part of that. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. How true it is to this day.
Yeah.
Have you got the story of the opponent in Matthew 5 and verse 25? That one's also found in Luke 12 and verse 48.
Settle up early, lest he throw you in prison and you...
That's right.
Get it over with.
As you're on the way, you need to take care of that. The two insolvent debtors in Matthew chapter 18, verse 23 and following, that goes back to the other one where you have the guy who owes money, but this is a different parable in Matthew 18 where they have no way to repay this huge debt. The Good Samaritan, which everybody is familiar with, in Luke chapter 10. Mm-hmm. There's one that's a little more obscure in Luke 11. You remember the parable of the 3 loaves.
No.
Yeah, you will when I remind you. It's the fella knocks on the guy's door at
late
midnight.
At night.
Yeah, and says,
oh, okay.
"Give me 3 loaves." You remember that one?
Just because he'll give him the bread just because you woke him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
John chapter 6, we have the next one. We're up to 26 now. The parable of the Good Shepherd, which I think everybody remembers. Then we've got Matthew chapter 7, the narrow gate.
Straight is the gate, narrow is the way.
Enter the narrow gate. You have the parable of the guests in Luke chapter 14. You remember that one?
The guest. Guest.
Let me give you the first verse.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, this one's...
the guest.
That's the way I've titled it.
Yeah.
Luke 14, verse 7. He began to speak a parable to the invited guests when he noticed how they had picked out the places of honor at the table.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that? Yeah.
You just don't go sit in a place of honor. You wait till you're invited.
You don't. I was staying with my brother a couple of weeks ago up in Denver, and I didn't sit in his chair. You know, you just don't do that. This is even. This really relates to a gathering where you would be seen by others, and you put yourself in a place of honor. Then you've got the marriage supper in Matthew chapter 22. I think it's pretty familiar to everybody. The wedding close in Matthew chapter 22, verse 10. Mm-hmm. The tower, you remember that in Luke chapter 14?
That makes me think of the one that we already talked about, where the guy had all that good stuff and he built the tower.
But this one is where Jesus says you've got to calculate the cost. It's really about discipleship.
Okay.
Figure, do you have enough money to build the tower?
See, I always think of that one as, because tied into that is whether or not you're going to go to war.
And that's the next one, the king going to war in Luke chapter 14, verse 31. Then you have some that are very familiar. We're up to 33 now. Matthew chapter 18, you've got the lost sheep, the lost coin in Luke 15, the prodigal son, the unjust steward in Luke chapter 16, which is a real interesting one, where he devises a manipulative way to get his way. And we will talk about that one at a future date. You've got the widow in Luke chapter 18.
The widow's mite?
And you've got the Pharisee and the tax gatherer in Luke chapter 18.
Prayer. I'm thankful that I'm not
like
tax
other people.
Yeah.
This guy over here. I've actually heard something similar to that before. Just fascinating. The slave's duty in Luke chapter 17 and verse 7.
Oh,
you remember that one?
Yeah. You don't say to your slave, sit down, take it easy. You say, where's my dinner?
Yeah. That one's kind of interesting, too. They all are. We're up to 40. The laborers in the vineyard. You remember that one in Matthew chapter 20?
Everybody agreed to work for a penny. What are you whining about?
Yeah. You've got the talents in Matthew chapter 25.
Somebody gets 3, somebody gets 5, somebody gets 10.
You got 2 sons in Matthew chapter 21 and verse 28.
And is that not tied in with the prodigal thing? No.
Let me get back here to Matthew 21.
The one son is told go work in the vineyard. The other says he won't, and the one who says he would didn't, but the one who says he wouldn't eventually did.
You got it. You got the wicked vine growers in Matthew chapter 21, verse 33 and following. That one's found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You have another fig tree analogy, and we're up to 44 now.
The one
in Matthew.
You don't gather figs from thistles?
There you go. You have the watching slave in Matthew 24 and in Luke chapter 12. You have the man on a journey in Mark chapter 13. You remember that one?
Man on a
journey. The man on a journey. This one, too, is a little tricky to remember. But
man on a journey.
Mark
I'm
13,
thinking of the Good Samaritan.
34. It's like a man who went away on a journey, and upon leaving his house and putting his slaves in charge, assigned to each one his task. Also commanded the doorkeeper to stay on the alert.
Okay.
Little different parable there than the others. You have the character of two slaves in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 45.
One being slothful and lazy, and the other one being diligent.
Luke 12. The 10 virgins, very familiar one in Matthew chapter Matthew chapter 25. And the watching slaves in Luke chapter 12 and verse 36. And then the vine and the branches in John chapter 15, verses 1 through 6. So there's 50.
You ended with my very favorite.
Yeah, I love that one too.
Yeah.
But there's 50, and there may be a couple more in there that I've overlooked, but I think that's a good division. So there they are. If you want that list, by the way, call or write to us, send me an email, and I will send you the list. At some time future to this episode, we'll talk more about those in detail. Fascinating study. We'll be right back. We thank you for your interest in What Do the Scriptures Say. We hope that you will come back to scripturesay.com often for answers to your Bible questions. See you then.